the action of the governor cannot be justified in any democratic society. And I can tell you, we have not less than 10 cases where our courts have felt that you cannot demolish the house of a citizen without due process. In this particular case, the governor is the lawmaker. He made the regulations. The governor is the enforcer of the law. He didn't ask the police to arrest anybody. The governor then turned himself into a court where he became the accuser, the prosecutor, the witness, and the judge, all at the same time. As if those transgressions were not enough, the governor also became the executioner of the judgment. Those acts are totally alien to a democratic society. And that is why all those who are affected will have to go to court to seek legal redress, because the action cannot be justified on that one.
Mr. Falana, if you can hold your thoughts for just a minute, let's go on a very quick commercial break, and when we are back, the morning show and this conversation continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching the morning show here on Arise News, and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, is still here with us on the show, looking into a number of issues. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Falana. Before we went on a break, you were commenting on the demolishing of 2 buildings in Rivers State and your take on that. Would you like to conclude your thoughts?
Well, incidentally, this is not the first time the human rights community has challenged the legal demolition of properties in Rivers State. I remember in 2002, in the case of Serak and Nigeria, the federal government was dragged to the Human and People's Rights in Banjul, the Gambia, for colluding with Shell Petroleum Corporation to demolish the properties of the Ogoni people. And of course, the commission made it abundantly clear that the government of Nigeria violated Article 7, right to fair hearing, and Article 14, right to property, entrenched in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. I also recall in 2010, Governor Rotimi Amechi wanted to demolish a waterfront in Rivers State. The SERAP took the matter up in the ECOWAS court. I handled the case. Again, the court made it clear that the decision of the government to violently attack the protest, against the planned demolition by the people living in the waterfront, it cannot be justified under the African Charter. And the court also made it clear that the government has a responsibility towards the provision of housing for citizens. Talk less of demolishing the ones that the citizens have built, and that therefore there has to be a procedure. I also handled the case, that's for Rivers State. I handled the case of the Pape people in Abuja, where the federal government, FCT territory, administration wanted to demolish the entire, land on the ground that the people were living there illegally. The court, the FCCI court made it clear in that judgment that we're not saying the government cannot demolish a property found wanting, but there must be a procedure. In the case of Rivers State, the governor is saying that his executive order has been violated. Again, the people alleged to have violated the executive order will have to be taken to a court, constituted in a manner pursuant to Section 36(1) that will guarantee the independence, the autonomy of the court, so that the court and the impartiality of the court, so that the court can hear the case. The Attorney General of Rivers State will have been required to charge the hoteliers to court. And if the court finds them guilty, the court will make an order in line with the regulations of the executive order. Even if the court orders a demolition, again, it's not the business of the governor to supervise the demolition. That will be done by officials of the court in the bailiff section, the bailiff department of the court. But there's no way a governor can take the law into his hands and decide to say, oh, this citizen has disobeyed my order. I am going to demolish his house. Unfortunately, the case reminds me of the case of Amakiri and in Rivers State in those days under the Gowon regime, where a governor felt that he was embarrassed on the day of his birthday by a journalist who had written about, lack of facilities for education in that state. And the governor, a military governor, Dete Spiff, who is a traditional ruler now, got soldiers to abduct the journalist, Amakere. He was detained. His head was shaved to the skull. He was brutalized. The court said, under the military, that was primitive. No ruler, no leader is allowed to take the law into his hands, and damages were awarded against the conduct of the governor. In the case of Odi, when the Obasanjo regime demolished Odi, Zakibiam, and I think there was another one, I think under the Yaradua regime, when Baramotu was attacked, I am aware that in 3 separate judgments of the Federal High Court, the total sum of 166 billion naira was awarded against the government of Nigeria. Part of the money has been paid, and I know efforts have been made by those who won the cases to have the compensation paid. So there is no way you can justify the illegal demolition of houses in Nigeria.
Mr. Falana, in the face of COVID-19, the National Assembly of Nigeria has been trying to come up with what they call an infectious diseases bill, which is supposed to be a repeal and an amendment of the Quarantine Act, more or less. Now, again, you have some other Nigerians saying that this is premature in the middle of a pandemic. This is not the right time to come up with that bill. And there are others who argue that that bill is an imitation of a similar bill 49 years ago in Singapore, which had even been updated by Singapore. And that there are provisions in that particular bill that are draconian, that erode fundamental human rights. But it looks like the National Assembly is determined to pass that bill, even accelerated. Only yesterday, Nigeria Governors Forum was also saying suspend the bill and allow for more discussion and more input. What would be your advice to the National Assembly on the question of this infectious diseases bill?
My advice to the National Assembly is that the bill be dropped in its entirety because it is superfluous, illegal, and unconstitutional. The superfluity of it arises from the fact that the National Assembly has conveniently forgotten that there was a law enacted in 2018. We are no longer dealing with the 1926 Colonial Quarantine Act. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control Act of 2018 has taken cognizance of the fears of the National Assembly. So that's what we should be dealing with, not the Quarantine Act. But the beauty of the Quarantine Act is that it empowers the president and the governors to deal with infectious diseases. The only area of that law that will require an amendment is the penalty for violating the regulations made pursuant to the Act. You are required to pay only 200 naira. So we definitely need to adjust that and make provisions for higher penalties. But on a very serious note, the fact that a law empowers the president to take charge of a situation gives the opportunity for the president to mobilize resources, as it is the case now, of governors to mobilize resources and also adopt measures that will take care of local peculiarities. But what the National Assembly is trying to do, the House of Reps, in the infectious bill, is to divest the president and the governors of the powers which they currently enjoy and confer all the powers on an unelected person, that is the Director General of the NCDC. That cannot be allowed. More so that Singaporean law is backward. It's no longer in tune with current reality, which has been copied and pasted by the House of Reps. And I can tell you, the law has not examined, the law has overlooked the provisions of our Constitution and other laws. For instance, the law says, almost like the River State, akin to the River State situation, that if the DG of the NCDC feel that there is suspects that there is an infectious disease somewhere, he can acquire your house without going through the procedure permitted by law. He also can order your arrest without any warrant. He can order vaccination without your consent, and so on and so forth. Again, these are strange provisions that cannot be accommodated under our law. Our courts have handled cases in this regard. So what I would rather enjoin the National Assembly to do is to abandon this dangerous path, look at the provisions of the NCDC Act 2018, look at the provisions of the National Health Act 2014, look at the provisions of the National Health Insurance Act of 2014, and see how we can update these laws to make provision for compulsory health insurance for every Nigerian in the private and public sector, and ensure that the government increases allocation to health on an annual basis. For me, these are the challenges before the National Assembly, and not going to destroy rights that have been recognized by the Constitution and our courts.
Mr. Falana, certainly there are a lot of worries with regards to the Control of Infectious Diseases Bill. We have just a couple minutes left. It would be great to get your views on the recent appointment of Professor Agboola Ibrahim Gambari as the Chief of Staff to the President.
What?
Well,
the President has
Mr.
made...
Falana, before you answer, if I may add to that, considering the age of the President and also the age of the Chief of Staff, do you think that these two gentlemen can effectively complement each other? Because many Nigerians have said, two geriatrics, President and Chief of Staff.
Well, I do not believe in what you might call gerontocracy, but at the same time, we must appreciate that wisdom has nothing to do with age, You have young, very reactionary young people who should not even be allowed to move near the seat of power. You also have some old men who may also be able to run a country very well, although there are some old men, that are trying to cause problems all over the world. But again, on a very serious note, with respect to Professor Agboola Gambari, the president has made his choice. Nigerians can only react by ensuring that the country is run properly. And if you must know, we must not elevate the office of the Chief of Staff beyond the provisions of the Constitution, as was our recent experience. We vote for leaders in this country, and we must never empower anybody who has not been elected to ride short over all of us. In the protocol of the government, the president comes first, the vice president, the chief justice of Nigeria, ministers of the government. So the office of the chief of staff is unknown to the Constitution. But with respect to the choice of the president, again, as I said, the president has made his choice from the CV of Professor Agboola Gambari. He's eminently qualified. The choice is now before Nigerians to ensure that this country is run properly.
Well, Mr. Falana, on that note, we have to thank you very much for joining us this morning on the morning show.
Thank you for joining us.
It has been quite an exciting conversation, and I'm sure our viewers, will also be pleased.
Yes.
Thank you very much.